Hey y'all, Coach Inthefight here, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about the Jewish calendar versus the Enoch calendar. Now, we're over here on ChatGPT using this calculator to show the differences, showing why the Enoch calendar was rejected, and it's pulling out some information that I didn't really know. And so we're going to sit back and listen to this report. If you have any comments or anything, put them in the comment section as we go, and we'll address them down there. All right, let's go ahead with the introduction.
Introduction. Throughout history, the question of timekeeping has never been merely a scientific or agricultural matter. It is deeply theological. The way we count days, months, and years determines when we keep the commanded feast days, the appointed times of the Most High. In the Book of Genesis, it is written that God appointed the sun, moon, and stars for signs and for seasons, for days and for years. The calendar is not man's invention. It is part of the divine order, established at creation. But in later centuries, this divine order was quietly replaced. The calendar used today by mainstream Judaism, based on the Metonic cycle, is not the calendar of Genesis, nor the calendar preserved in the ancient Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch contains a detailed revelation of the heavenly calendar, a 364-day solar calendar, grounded in observable signs, beginning after the spring equinox and marking the start of months with the appearance of the moon. This calendar ensures the feasts of the Lord are kept in their correct seasons and in alignment with the sun, moon, and stars, just as God commanded. But this calendar was rejected. Not because it contradicted the Torah, it didn't, but because it stood in the way of a man-made system. A system built to control religious life, to shift power away from the prophets and back to the scribes and priests who had aligned themselves with political authority. This video will examine how and why the Book of Enoch was pushed aside. We will look at the rise of the Metonic calendar, and how it came to dominate Jewish religious life. And we will demonstrate that many of the feast days, including the Day of Trumpets, are now being observed on the wrong dates. We will also consider the warning given in another ancient text, the Book of Jubilees. In chapter 6, verses 34 to 38, we read, "And all the children of Israel will forget and will not find the path of the years, and will forget the new moons, and seasons, and Sabbaths, and they will go wrong as to all the order of the years. For there will be those who will assuredly make observations of the moon, how it disturbs the seasons and comes in from year to year 10 days too soon. For this reason the years will come upon them when they will disturb the order, and make an abominable day the day of testimony, and a profane day a feast day. This prophecy has come true. And the time has come to return to the original, to the calendar preserved in Enoch, confirmed in Jubilees, and rooted in Genesis." Let us begin.
Okay, that sounded pretty good, with the exception of this part where he says that the heavenly calendar is a 364-day solar calendar, but according to Genesis, it is a calendar based on the sun, the moon, and the stars. But anyway, we'll go on to the next section.
Part 2. Background, the calendar in Scripture. In order to understand the controversy surrounding the Book of Enoch and the calendar it presents, we must first return to the foundation, the Word of God as revealed in the Torah. From the very first chapter of Genesis, the Creator established the timekeeping system by which his people were to live. Genesis chapter 1, verse 14 states, "And God said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days and years." The word translated as seasons is the Hebrew word moedim, the same word used throughout the Torah to refer to the appointed times of the Lord. This includes the weekly Sabbath, and the annual feast days such as Passover, the Feast of Weeks, the Day of Trumpets, and the Day of Atonement. God's system of timekeeping is based not on human tradition or mathematical invention, but on the visible movements of the sun, the moon, and the stars. These luminaries serve as fixed signs in the heavens, by which days, months, and years are to be reckoned. In the book of Exodus, chapter 12, verse 2, we read, "This month shall be unto you the beginning of months, it shall be the first month of the year to you." Here, God commands Moses and Aaron to begin their calendar with the new moon that appears in the season of Abib, the time of spring. In Leviticus chapter 23, God lays out the feast days in precise relation to the days of the month. Passover is to be kept on the 14th day of the first month. The Day of Atonement is to be kept on the 10th day of the 7th month. And the Feast of Trumpets is to be kept on the first day of the 7th month. This means that if the beginning of the year is miscounted, or if the months are started on the wrong day, then the feasts will not fall on their appointed times. In other words, an incorrect calendar leads to disobedience, even if unintentional. The Torah does not give detailed instructions for calculating the calendar. It simply assumes that God's people will observe the signs in the heavens, just as he commanded in Genesis. But as we will see in the Book of Enoch, the Most High did not leave his people without guidance. He revealed to Enoch, the seventh from Adam, a complete understanding of how the sun, moon, and stars move in perfect order to mark the times and the seasons. This revelation was preserved for the righteous. But in later generations, it would be hidden, rejected, and replaced by the traditions of men. In the next section, we will examine the calendar recorded in the Book of Enoch, a calendar based on heavenly observation, not human calculation. Let us continue.
I'll just add that even though now we are in the traditions of man, this is not to last forever. The traditions of man will break with the rest of man's systems, and then we'll return back to the way things are supposed to be. But I'm not going to disturb it. I'm just going to let it keep generating these texts, and we'll just make hopefully minor corrections as we go. If he goes too far off track, we'll have to stop him, but it's okay so far.
Part 3, the Book of Enoch and its calendar system. The Book of Enoch is one of the oldest and most detailed writings preserved from the ancient world. It claims to be the testimony of Enoch, the seventh generation from Adam, to whom God revealed the secrets of heaven, including the order of the sun, moon, and stars. In the section known as the Book of the Courses of the Heavenly Luminaries, Enoch is shown the divine calendar system. This calendar is not theoretical, it is observational, grounded in what can be seen in the sky. Enoch describes a 364-day year, divided perfectly into 4 seasons of 91 days each. Each season contains 2 months of 30 days, followed by 1 month of 31 days. The year is divided into quarters, and the extra day at the end of each quarter keeps the calendar in sync with the solar cycle. Unlike man-made calendars that drift or require constant adjustment, the Enoch calendar does not rely on intercalation or postponement rules. It simply observes the signs of the heavens, just as God intended. Enoch also tells us when the year begins. In chapter 72, verse 32, it says, "On that day the sun rises from that gate, and sets in the west, and returns to the east, and rises in the third gate for 31 mornings, and sets in the west of the heaven. On that day the night decreases and amounts to 9 parts, and the day to 9 parts. And the year becomes exactly as to its days 364. This refers to the spring equinox, the day when daylight and darkness are equal, and the sun returns to its starting gate in the east. According to Enoch, the new year begins after the equinox, with the next visible new moon. In chapter 72, verse 5, we read, "At that time it appears, and becomes to you the beginning of the month. 30 days it is with the sun in the gate from which the sun goes forth." This confirms that the appearance of the moon, not the mathematical conjunction, marks the beginning of the month. The day, too, begins at sunset, not at midnight or sunrise. In chapter 78, Enoch speaks of the waxing and waning of the moon, and its visibility during the evening hours, further confirming that the sacred day begins when the sun goes down. This structure, a 364-day solar year, lunar months beginning with the visible moon, and days counted from evening to evening, creates a precise, balanced, and divinely ordered calendar. It also aligns perfectly with Genesis chapter 1 verse 14, where the sun, moon, and stars are all mentioned as signs for times and seasons. This calendar ensures that the appointed feast days will always fall in the correct seasons. Passover will never drift into winter. Trumpets will never come before the actual 7th month. Atonement and tabernacles will never be out of alignment. It is a calendar of order, not confusion. But it is not the calendar in use today. As we will see in the next section, the Book of Enoch was rejected, and with it, the calendar that had been given from heaven. Let us now examine the rise of the Metonic calendar, and the beginning of calendar confusion.
Okay, let me just add that the Day of Remembrance, or that seasonal day is key to all of this. Without that, I mean, it kind of seems like magic, but it's not. It's very simple. We have these 4 very specific days on the calendar. On the Gregorian calendar or the pagan calendar, they fall around the time of the equinoxes and the solstices. But we have to remember that we didn't have access to computers or telescopes or any of this modern day technology. So what Enoch did was simply laid it out in 91-day seasons for us, with months of 30, 30, and 31 days. And of course, those 30 days start from the 0% moon. In other words, from the 0% moon to the sighting of the next new moon and the start of the new month would be 30 days. But again, you start from the 0% moon and start counting off your next 30 days. But anyway, we'll talk about that more in other videos. Let's go on.
Part 4. The Metonic calendar, a man-made system. After the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE, a major shift occurred within Judaism. Without a central priesthood or a functioning temple, religious leadership transitioned fully into the hands of the rabbis. Along with this shift came a redefinition of the biblical calendar. The calendar that had once relied on observation, the visible new moon and the signs of the sun and stars, was gradually replaced by a calculated system. By the 4th century CE, under the influence of both Babylonian and Greek astronomy, the rabbinic authorities had formally adopted what is now known as the Metonic calendar. Named after the Greek astronomer Meton of Athens, this system is based on the idea that 19 solar years are almost equal to 235 lunar months. Using this method, 7 leap months are added over a 19-year cycle to keep the lunar calendar loosely aligned with the solar year. But unlike the calendar described in Enoch, or even the earlier observational methods used in the time of the Torah, the Metonic calendar is built on mathematical prediction, man-made rules, and calendar postponements. One of these rules is known as Lo Adu Rosh, meaning that the new year, according to rabbinic law, can never begin on a Sunday, Wednesday, or Friday. If the new moon would place Rosh Hashanah on one of those days, it is postponed by 1 or even 2 days. Another rabbinic rule, known as Decayat, allows feast days to be moved in order to avoid back-to-back Sabbaths or to make the calendar more convenient for human needs. The problem is this: none of these rules appear in the Torah. The Torah never authorizes postponements. It never teaches that man has the authority to shift God's appointed times. And it never commands the use of calculations to predict the months. As a result of these human traditions, the feast days can be, and often are, celebrated on the wrong day. The Feast of Trumpets may fall before the actual new moon. The Day of Atonement may be observed outside the true 10th day. Passover may be kept before the year has even begun. This is not a small matter. In the Torah, disobedience in the timing of the feasts could lead to being cut off from the people of Israel. In Leviticus chapter 23, the phrase, "in its appointed time," is repeated again and again. God is not vague about his calendar. The command is clear. Yet this man-made system, built on Greek astronomy and rabbinic logic, has become the dominant calendar used in Jewish communities today, and by extension, in most Messianic and Hebrew roots groups as well. But it is not the calendar of Enoch. It is not the calendar of the Torah. And it is not the calendar established at creation. In the next section, we will examine the historical rejection of the Book of Enoch, and how this rejection allowed the calendar to take root.
So the Jewish calendar is based on Greek astrology, and you hear how they are able to change the days, even of the memorial blowing of trumpets or other days. But anyway, this is pretty good. Let's go on.
Part 5. The Rejection of Enoch, When and Why. The Book of Enoch was once widely read, quoted, and respected among the ancient people of Israel. It was known to the early patriarchs, studied among the prophets, and treasured by certain priestly communities, such as the Essenes, who preserved multiple copies of it among the Dead Sea Scrolls. Even the New Testament bears witness to its authority. In the book of Jude, verses 14 and 15, Enoch is quoted directly, a prophecy that does not appear anywhere in the Torah, the prophets, or the writings. It comes only from the Book of Enoch. Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his holy ones, to execute judgment upon all. This confirms that at the time of the apostles, the Book of Enoch was still considered valid scripture. So what changed? The rejection of Enoch did not happen overnight. It was a gradual process, driven by both political and religious agendas. After the fall of the Second Temple in the 1st century, Jewish leadership was restructured under rabbinic authority, centered in Yavna and later in Babylon. These leaders began to redefine Jewish identity apart from the temple, the priesthood, and the prophetic writings that threatened their control. The Book of Enoch was one of those writings. Its calendar directly challenged the authority of the rabbis. It condemned those who distorted the times and seasons. It emphasized heavenly order over human tradition. And it presented a vision of final judgment, not through rabbinic teaching, but through the return of a divine Son of Man, a messianic figure enthroned in heaven. For Rabbinic Judaism, which was building a new system based on oral tradition and calculated time, Enoch's writings were unacceptable. By the 2nd or 3rd century CE, the Book of Enoch had been excluded from the Hebrew canon. It was no longer copied in Hebrew or Aramaic, and by the medieval period, it had nearly vanished from Jewish memory. But not entirely. The Book of Enoch survived in the Ethiopian Church, which continued to preserve it in the ancient Gay language. It remained part of the biblical canon, and still is to this day. The rejection of Enoch was never based on any proof that it contradicted the Torah. In fact, it aligns with Genesis, confirms the flood account in detail, and upholds righteousness and obedience to God's law. The real reason for its rejection was that it contradicted the calendar system that was being imposed by rabbinic authorities, a system that now dominates not only Judaism, but much of the modern Hebrew roots and Messianic world. The Book of Jubilees, which supports Enoch's calendar, warned us that this would happen. In Jubilees chapter 6, verses 34 to 38, we read, "And all the children of Israel will forget and will not find the path of the years. And they will forget the new moons, and seasons, and Sabbaths. And they will go wrong as to all the order of the years. For they will make observations of the moon. And it will come in from year to year 10 days too soon, and they will make an abominable day the day of testimony, and a profane day a feast day." This was not merely a historical observation. It was a prophecy, one that has been fulfilled. By rejecting the Book of Enoch, religious authorities removed the divine blueprint for timekeeping. And in its place, they installed a man-made calendar, one that leads the people of God to observe the appointed times on wrong days. In the next section, we will see the consequences of this rejection, and how the feast days have been misaligned ever since.
So they rejected the Book of Enoch because it disagreed with their calendar and what they wanted to teach. The thing about it, the same with the Book of Jubilees. It also disagrees with them, and they also rejected it as well. So we think about all of this knowledge that has been lost, simply because they wanted their calendar system to dominate the world. And as you see, it is dominating the world because people who don't even claim to be Jewish are actually following this Jewish way of doing things. But anyway, let's go on.
Part 6. The impact. Feast days now fall on the wrong days. When the calendar is wrong, the feast days are wrong. That is the unavoidable conclusion of replacing God's timekeeping system with a man-made one. And that is exactly what has happened. By rejecting the calendar revealed to Enoch, a calendar based on the sun, moon, and stars, the religious authorities introduced a system that, over time, caused the appointed times of God to drift out of alignment with his original order. The Metonic calendar, with its cycles, postponement rules, and artificial adjustments, does not follow the visible signs in the heavens. It often sets feast days based on pre-calculated rules, regardless of whether the moon is visible, or whether the year has truly begun according to the signs of the spring. As a result, the feast days frequently fall on the wrong day, sometimes even in the wrong month. Take the Feast of Trumpets, also called Yom Teruah in Scripture. According to Leviticus 23, it is to be kept on the first day of the 7th month. But if the 7th month is miscounted, or if the new moon is miscalculated, the entire foundation of this feast collapses. When the year is started too early, before the spring equinox, for example, then every month that follows is shifted forward. By the time the 7th month arrives, the Feast of Trumpets could be celebrated a full month ahead of its true timing. This is not just a matter of preference. It is disobedience. God said in Leviticus chapter 23 verse 4, "These are the feasts of the Lord, even holy convocations, which you shall proclaim in their appointed seasons." He did not give permission to adjust them. He did not authorize a mathematical cycle. And he did not tell us to observe traditions that make the commandment of God of no effect. Even the Book of Jubilees warned us that this would happen. In chapter 6, verse 37, it says, "For this reason the years will come upon them when they will disturb the order, and make an abominable day the day of testimony, and a profane day a feast day, and they will confound all the days. The holy with the profane, and the profane day with the holy." This is exactly what has taken place. The Rabbinic calendar is now considered authoritative in most Jewish and Messianic communities. And yet it openly declares, even in official Jewish sources, that feast days may be moved, postponed, or adjusted to suit practical needs. The calendar of Enoch, by contrast, is not adjustable. It is fixed in the heavens. It follows the equinox. It begins the year only after the signs are observed. And it places the feast days exactly where they belong, according to the rhythm of creation. That is why it was rejected. And that is why it must be restored. In the final section, we will look at the call to return, and the restoration of the true calendar of God.
Now, let me add here that it's not just the first month that can throw everything off. Remember, the Day of Remembrance is what sets the seasons. The seasons are not set annually. Meaning we don't find out when the seasons will land at the beginning of the year. We have to go by the Enoch schedule, 30, 30, and 31 days, to determine when each season will start. So we could actually start spring on time and then get off in the summer or get off in the fall. This is different than the Jewish calendar. They have what's called the 13th month. So even though the celestials may point to the fact that we're off in the summer or the fall or even in the winter time, the Jewish calendar only considers it in the 13th month. So it would allow the fall festivals or the winter festivals to be out of sync, just waiting for a correction in that 13th month. That's why there is no such thing as a 13th month. But anyway, and the other thing that I wanted to point out for those that are kind of new is the reason why they are moving these feast days. It says that they have the ability to move these feast days as they will. Well, the reason why they move them is because of the religious holidays. Like, for instance, if Passover would fall too close to Easter or something like that, they will actually move the festival days. But anyway, let's go on.
Part 7. The restoration of the true calendar. The rejection of the Book of Enoch led to centuries of confusion over God's appointed times. But the story does not end there. In these last days, a growing number of believers are returning to the ancient paths. They are no longer satisfied with man-made traditions. They are asking hard questions. They are searching the Scriptures and the heavens to rediscover the true order of time as it was established in the beginning. This restoration is not based on speculation. It is grounded in the observable signs God placed in the sky. Genesis chapter 1 verse 14 is clear. "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night. And let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days and years." This was the original calendar, the calendar confirmed in the Book of Enoch and supported by the Book of Jubilees. It begins the year after the spring equinox, when the sun completes its circuit and returns to its starting gate in the east. The first visible new moon after that event marks the beginning of the first month. The day begins at sunset, not midnight, in accordance with the creation pattern, and the evening and the morning were the first day. And the year contains 364 days, not 354 or 365. It is a perfect, divisible year, 4 equal seasons, 12 months, with no need for leap months or human adjustments. This calendar ensures that the feasts of the Lord will always fall in their proper season. Passover will never drift into winter. The Feast of Trumpets will never come a month early. The Day of Atonement will never fall on a profane day. It is a calendar of divine order, not human invention. In the Book of Acts, chapter 3, verse 21, the Apostle Peter speaks of a time of restoration, whom the heaven must receive until the times of restoration of all things, which God has spoken by the mouth of all his holy prophets since the world began. Restoring the true calendar is part of that process. It is not about returning to Judaism. It is not about joining a denomination. It is about honoring the Creator's design, rejecting the traditions that have led us astray, and walking in obedience to the times he has appointed. The Book of Enoch was hidden for a time, but it has not been destroyed. It has survived, a witness to the truth, a challenge to the system, and a call to return. The choice is now ours. Will we continue following the calendar of men, with its postponements, its calculations, and its corrupted feasts? Or will we return to the calendar of heaven, the one revealed to Enoch, confirmed in Jubilees, aligned with Genesis, and visible in the sky? The time has come to choose. Return to the appointed times. Return to the order of creation. Return to the calendar of the Most High.
And with that, we're going to close this video out. If you want to find out more about this sacred calendar, you can get information over at inthefight.shop. Even get some free downloads and printouts that you can use for training aids. And also remember to get your copy of the Book of Life before the Feast of Tabernacles. You can do that at inthefight.shop as well. But in the meantime, if you want to continue this discussion, leave a comment below in the comment section, and I'll see you down there. Shalom.